it's time to take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. The value of electronic payment transactions through the point-of-sale terminal, the Nigerian Interbank Settlement System, instant payment and electronic fund transfer increased significantly by 82% to 11.6 trillion in 2020 compared to 6.4 trillion recorded in April 2020. A report by this day newspaper quotes Bismarck Rewane, Chief Executive Officer, Financial Derivatives Company Limited, as attributing this to the impact of COVID-19 in a report he presented at the Lagos Business School Executive Breakfast Session for July at the weekend. He stated that figures were obtained from Nigerian Interbank Settlement and NIB system. The spike in e-banking activities in the month was necessitated by the lockdown in the country and as part of effort by both federal and some state governments to contain the spread of COVID-19. Check transactions within the period stood at 178.1 billion. A further analysis of check transactions showed that 3 of the 5 states with the highest transactions were from the southwest region, while the 5 states with the lowest transactions are in the northern region. Our former president, Goodluck Jonathan, okay. I think we'll have to have a chat on that first before we move to the next story. Real quickly, COVID-19, we've started to see the benefits.
Yeah.
Benefits, in a way. 11.7 trillion. Here's a report from about 6 trillion. We can be a totally, electronic transaction-dependent economy.
I mean, the central bank over successive years has been harping on about cashless Nigeria, and here we are. So even though the pandemic has been an absolute disaster in many ways, this is one advantage. Because when was the last time you handled cash? I was thinking about it when I saw this story. I haven't handled a Naira note
Restaurants
since
don't even
March.
take cash again.
I have not touched a Naira note.
Some restaurants don't take cash again.
Can you blame them?
Yeah, they can take cash.
Well, you are very right in one regard that COVID-19 has changed attitudes, but also the benefits, yes, but we should put the benefits in quotes. With regard to electronic transactions, with regard to financial inclusion, part of the point made by Bismarck Rewane over the weekend is this point that, look, many people now engage in POS transactions. Many people engage in e-commerce. Of course, if you were under lockdown, you will not have face-to-face interactions in terms of commercial transactions. And hence, it makes sense that during that period, there was an increase in POS transactions and e-commerce. Now, the advantage of that is that perhaps more Nigerians will get used to it. And when they get used to it, post-COVID-19, we'll find more people relying less on cash. So that's a positive side of it. The second positive side of it that he identified is the fact that in those states, like Lagos, for example, where you had a lot of transactions online and volume of spending, then, of course, it's to the advantage of the economy in those states. So that makes sense. However, he also pointed out that check transactions went down. Well, it makes sense. Because banks were closed. Nobody could go and submit checks, so you had to rely on e-commerce. But the concern, of course, is that there are many Nigerians who are not on these online transaction platforms.
Like somebody we could mention.
Like dinosaurs like me, for example. And I think the challenge, of course, but I have my reasons. I have my reasons, But of course, the challenge for the authorities, the central bank and other relevant agencies, is to encourage more people to take advantage of online transactions. And I see a lot of young people who are embracing it, and maybe older people who are very conservative can learn from that example. However, Rewane drew attention to certain other challenges that we're facing within the economy. He says poverty is widespread. The scope of inequality has expanded. And then, of course, you have fiscal stroke within the economy. You have dwindling low revenue. Federal revenue allocation has gone down. And I think that we should perhaps focus more on those distortions within the economy that were there before COVID, that had become more serious during COVID, and that we need to deal with post-COVID. And it's for us to come up with the right strategies, either in terms of prudent management or how to mitigate the impact of all of these negative headwinds with regard to prosperity within the economy and the welfare of the average Nigerian. That is where the challenge is. And it's a good thing that Bismarck Rewani, who has drawn our attention to all of this, is a member of the Presidential Economic Advisory Council. And, you know, he's not a guy who is afraid to put his ideas on the table. And we hope he will push those ideas.
But we know the pathway to prudent management. I mean, I like that word you use, prudent, you know, because I checked it up once and I saw that it means to be wise and careful. Are we wise how we spend our resources in this country? Are we careful about it? And we know the pathway to prudent management. Or also a report is one. This government cannot continue to run this way.
Restructuring is another.
Restructuring is another one. But there's another thing called political will. Are we ready to take the bull by the horn? Because it's not sustainable. It's a country on its knees, begging.
Well, we may get to a point when we realize that we have no choice anymore in the matter. If the country must survive, if we do not want the, the outflows of all these distortions to affect social and political stability.
I think we're there.
I guess that is why the Economic Sustainability Committee, led by the Vice President, and the Economic Advisory Council are calling for new ideas, new approaches. But you are right. The main thing is the political will to do it.
The political will to do it.
We must move beyond rhetoric to concrete action. But of course, you know, we continue to borrow. 90% of what we have is used to service debt.
I pray we don't get to the point where we have the core WB yet. Things fall apart and the center cannot hold. I pray we don't get to that.
Are we not there, though?
Who was that president who said, is the economy stupid? Deal with it. We have to deal with the challenges
American
in the economy.
politics.
Tunde, over to you. That's all on the news anyway. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have the trio of Rotus, Michael, and Aaron to give us updates on Africa and global business and COVID-19. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now with Africa Business Update is Rotus Odure. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning.
Rotus.
Morning, Tundu. Good morning, Rufai.
Morning.
All Africa business stories are coming from Nigeria today. We're that hot. So the first thing, of course, is the exchange rates. The central bank on Friday announced a movement in the exchange rate at the SMAS window, secondary market intervention sales. This is a window where importers who need foreign exchange will approach the central bank to bid for using a Form M and letters of credit. CBN Governor Gordon Emefiele is, keeping his word where he said that he is going to, the central bank is going to, unify the exchange rate. So usually, when you approach the SMAS window as an importer using your Form M and using your letter of credit, you will bid at a floor of 360 naira. That's initially 360 naira to the dollar, which was the official exchange rate. But this most recently on Friday, they were informed by the central bank that the floor was now 380 naira to the dollar, essentially moving from 360 to 380. So you have to bid at least at that amount or higher in order to be able to get your foreign exchange for what for your imports, again, with your Form M and with your letters of credit. Because I have to emphasize that the central bank has been, adamantly pushing that it's only legitimate demand that is going to be met. This is a good move. He's fulfilling his word. However, the market really wants to see one sweeping exchange rate across all the windows, because this is just one window, and the ramifications will be apparent. You'll see what will happen with power, where gas is purchased in dollars. If you have one unified exchange rate, that will trickle down to us end users. Of course, tariffs would go up. In PMS, pump price, the NNPC would no longer have to be the sole importer anymore. If you had one exchange rate across the board, other oil marketers can bring imports, refined crude. Of course, that would, push up the pump price because of the foreign exchange dynamic there. And so essentially what the market is looking for is this. Whether it is the SMAS window, whether you're an importer looking to bring in raw materials, whether you're a parent who is paying for school fees overseas, whether it's a cross-border remittance, whether it is personal travel allowance or business travel allowance. We just want one rate and one announcement across the board. So we're still waiting on that, but the central bank is fully fulfilling its word and making those steps towards a unified exchange rate. So one more time, the SMAS window, it is at 380 now, no longer 360. Secondly, let's talk about Zainab Ahmed, the Minister of Finance. She was at a webinar, or rather she was represented by Mrs. Sarah Alade at a webinar that was hosted by the NESG, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group. And this webinar, this title is a mouthful here. It's the Fiscal Policy Roundtable and Tax Investment and Competitiveness Policy Commission. That's also PwC was there as well, since they're a policy partner as far as advisory services is concerned for the federal government. So Sarah Alade, who by the way has been at the central bank, she retired after like 23 plus years. She was actually acting governor of the CBN in 2014 when Lamido Sanusi was suspended. So she was representing the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, and essentially was saying at the webinar that, look, Nigeria has no choice but to keep on borrowing because of the twin headwinds of the COVID-19 pandemic and the drop in oil prices. She said, look, Nigeria will try to broaden its revenue base. It will try to reduce, costs, but borrowing has to continue because it is what it is, essentially. As you remember, we brought this up before. Q1 2020, we brought in revenue of 950 billion naira. Debt servicing was 940, 99%. So everyone is aware of Nigeria's debt issues and the rising debts. We have to borrow more. That's essentially what she was saying on behalf of the Minister of Finance at this webinar. So, I mean, it just is what it is. What are we going to do? We have liabilities that need to be met. But, of course, everybody is still stressing that the federal government, exemplify, fiscal prudence with regards to what's down the road for the country. From there, we go to Fidelity Bank. Over the weekend, all these things happened over the weekend. Fidelity Bank made an announcement of change in leadership at the board. Mr. Ernest Ebi, who is the chairman of the board, his term is completed on August the 14th. He will be stepping down. Mr. Seni Adesu, who is the independent non-executive director, his term ended on June the 13th. And replacing Mr. Ernest Ebi as chairman is Mr. Mustafa Jacoby, who is, of course, a friend of the house at Arise News. He's been on the morning show several times. He's a former CEO of the inaugural CEO of AMCON, the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria. 40 plus years in investment banking. He's the new chairman of the board. So he will be taking over on the 14th. So it's going to be very interesting seeing him take over with this new position and seeing what he brings to the table over at Fidelity Bank. So congratulations to him. I hope to have him back, of course, on the morning show, Global Business Report, and talk to him about his new journey. Finally, Mo Abodu of Ebony Life made an announcement over the weekend. Again, all this news happened over the weekend. I think this was just yesterday. That Ebony Life is going to be on July the 31st. Will be exiting DSTV as far as providing content. She says that now all content on Ebony Life is going to be available via their app, Ebony On, and that's where you're going to be able to get content. It's going to be priced at 500 naira for if you're viewing it here in Nigeria. $2.99 if you're viewing overseas. I mean, she essentially, what she said on her Instagram was that, content consumption is changing now. There are lots of digital platforms, they might as well do it themselves. It is, however, suspected or speculated that maybe ad revenue was falling over while they're on DSTV, so that's why they're moving. Interesting thing though, at $2.99, it's the 500 naira equivalent is much less. 299 at an exchange rate. See, here we go with the exchange rate now. Whether you're using 360 or 380 or 400, the $299 price point, that's $2.99, is much higher than the 500 naira price point in Nigeria, which means the price point suggests they're probably subsidizing in order to increase market share here in the country. They're also going to be facing a lot of competition overseas from the Netflixes of this world Hulu, Disney Plus, and so on and so forth. Those companies are publicly traded, so we know how much they spend on content. We don't know how much Ebony Life spends on content. We don't know what their cost measures are. So it's hard to determine the profitability of this price point of 500 Naira here in Nigeria and 299 overseas. But over the course of the year, I guess we'll see how that plays out for them. But, you know, DSTV offers a big platform for these channels. So for her to be branching out on their own, it's a brave move, and we will see how it works out for the company. And that's the update.
Thank you. Congratulations to Mr. Mustafa Jacoby. We're delighted for him. And as for Mo Abudu, well, she's nothing if not brave. So I'm not surprised by that. We wish her all the best.
Yes,
well, a quick comment on Ebony Life. You recall that this has been on the table since 2018, when Ebony Life lost its exclusivity rights on DSTV, particularly in South Africa. And, you know, the owner of Ebony Life, Mo Abudu, began to talk about coming up with the Ebony Life app, which she has been experimenting with. And then later, of course, she joined the Star Times, so that in Nigeria you could have Ebony Life on both Star Times and also DSTV in Nigeria. Now, every business at one point or the other, we need to innovate, we need to upgrade. And I see this as part of a move on our part to take on the challenge of innovation. But perhaps the biggest achievement that she has been able to put on the table is a partnership with Netflix, right, to provide content and also to do a series around two major Nigerian literary classics. The Secret Lives of Baba Segi's Wives, by my former student Lola Shone, and also Professor Wole Soyinka's Death and the King's Horseman. As for the banks and the SMAS that you talked about, now, have the banks been communicated on this yet? Has anybody seen the circular from the CBN? Are you aware of any communication in that regard?
It is understood that a circular was sent out, but it hasn't been seen yet. But it's understood that a circular has been sent out.
Oh, thank you, Rod.
Thank you very much,
Susan. Congrats once again to Mustafa Jacoby.
Yes, certainly.
Now for Global Business Update, we're joined by Michael Wilson from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Morning. We're going to China first, and a massive rebound on the markets there, given that they've been looking at what's been going on generally speaking in China. So that's been a big boost for shippers and steel makers. Still the concerns over COVID-19, obviously, but the Shanghai and Shenzhen listed shares up by as much as 3%. That's the biggest daily increase for over a year, and the Hang Seng up by more than 2%. It's worth looking at the detail of this, actually. The Caixin survey of Chinese services for June was 58.4, its highest in 10 years. And keep in mind that the February reading was minus 26.5. So you can see, or rather 26.5. So there's been a colossal turnaround there. So that's Asia. Let me just recap on what happened at the end of last week, because it was quite significant. I'm talking about Europe and I'm talking about the United States. Now, the United States markets on holiday on Friday because of Independence Day coming up on July the 4th, which was Saturday. But once again, this US health official warned that COVID-19 had actually mutated, and it could be accelerating at a faster pace. And that volatility was relatively low on Friday. Trading shares absolutely dead in the water, really. And on Friday, it was also revealed that Arizona and California have also seen a jump in COVID-19. So it seems likely that traders in Europe really took the view that they shouldn't be doing a great deal before we actually get back. The World Health Organization has chimed in again. On the 4th of July, that was Saturday, 212,000 new COVID-19 cases were registered. That's a daily record. The US, Brazil and India were the largest contributors to that. The US reading on Saturday was 53,000, and some hard-hit states like Florida are experiencing a new drop-off, though. So we'll see. 34 states, though, in the United States seeing an increase in cases. PMI Purchasing Managers Index reports Italy, France, Germany and Italy actually quite good. Spanish and French showing definite positive growth there. Great improvement on May levels. So it's clear that things are improving, but there are still local lockdowns. We've got one here in Leicester. We've got one in Melbourne and parts of Spain too. Now, a good day on Saturday because in the UK, you know, we like our pubs and they actually opened. The event was referred to as Super Saturday and it was in continuation of life returning to normal. The UK economy has come a long way in the past few months, but businesses are reopening and the economic rebound and so on. There you see crowds in the centre of London. There'll be worries about whether or not this will contribute towards a second spike in what was going on and so on. But we'll see. It doesn't look too bad at the moment. Let's go to Germany now, away from London. Germany factory orders up in May, up 10%. That's a massive rebound from minus 25.8 registered in April. We're in Germany now, and Germany's economy minister believes recovery will begin in October. US construction PMI report for June should be up. It's around about 9:30, up at 47. And we'll get retail sales in the Eurozone at 10 o'clock. Consensus estimate is 15% up. Bear in mind it was minus 17% when all this started. In the UK, then, the Finance Minister, Rishi Sunak, will be giving a very important speech. Overall, tax cuts are being played down, but there might be some kind of VAT relief for the hospitality sector. And the property tax, in other words, how much tax you actually pay if you sell a house, might go up from 125,000 to 500,000. So that's seen as quite a good thing. We've had a lot of talk over the weekend about this offer being made to Hong Kongers to come and live, to be fast-tracked to come and live in the UK. The consensus about that is that it would boost the economy quite a lot. Productivity is quite high, and they have obviously a tendency to work hard. Here's something which we're not sure about. Households across the world have been saving since the crisis, and this is a cash stash, really. The question is, how is it going to be spent? Is it going to be spent in shopping, or is it going to be saving for the next crisis? If it is about shopping, then it might be something to do with increasing inflation, and that's something we don't want to see, because obviously increasing inflation means higher interest rates. Lloyd's has lost its CEO until he goes in June. And he's been there, Antonio Horta Osario, he's been there for a long time, taking the bank over a big transformation. And banks have a long way to go, obviously, trying to help the country out of the recession. And finally, commodities, oil prices, a mixed market snapshot on Monday. Brent crude edging higher, supported by tighter supplies, and the WTI, they've also dropped on slight concerns about growth. So a mixed picture as far as commodities are concerned, but we're starting off on a relatively good start to the week.
Well, Michael, a quick question on Hong Kong. Hong Kongers have become the most sought-after immigrants. At least about 6 countries were told, including the UK, is offering them visas or, citizenship or whatever. Yeah. Now, but China is threatening that if the United Kingdom goes ahead to support under the BNO Hong Kongers, that there will be consequences and countermeasures. What could those consequences or countermeasures possibly be?
Well, I've no idea, and I don't think the Chinese diplomats have either. It might be something to do with trade. So we're poised like this. Here's what's going on. So we cannot act alone against China and its world domination plans. There is more consternation in this country about Huawei and its membership of the 5G network, which we suspect will try to be phased out next year. So that's number one. Number two is, who is actually going to get in the White House? The reason I mention this is, if the Democrats get in, there might be a slightly more conciliatory attitude towards China, which would help the trade discussions coming up, because all this stuff about Hong Kong is very important. But the main thing is, what's going to happen with China trade? What's going to happen with UK trade? Hong Kong is necessary as a gateway. Yes, we're offering its citizens here as a way of saying to China, you can't bully us. But at the same time, we can't take China on our own. So it's really a question of how the world transforms itself after the election in the United States. It does look as though the Democrats are doing slightly better. The belief here is if they do, there might be slightly more conciliatory noises. There is no point in taking on a country like China. You have to talk, you have to be conciliatory, and you have to make plans, because we do still live in a globalized economy and we are dependent upon each other, both large and small.
How the cookie crumbles, the UK now being conciliatory towards China. Maybe in the 70s that would not be the case.
Anyway, thank you very much, Michael Wilson. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
And now for COVID-19 pandemic update, we're joined by Aaron Akerejada. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning, Tindu. It's always a pleasure to see you every day. You're looking chic this morning, I must say.
Thank you, Aaron.
You're welcome. And good morning to you, Dr. Abati.
Good morning, Aaron.
And good morning to you,
She's looking chic. That's a song from The Freak. You remember Freak Out? The Freak. It's a chic. That's a song.
Good morning.
Come up with better lines.
Okay.
Be innovative.
I will try my best. Now, getting straight into the matter, looking at how things are played out in terms of COVID-19 and the numbers globally. But we'll start it off from Africa and looking at the African figures. As of this morning, we have well over 300,000, as a matter of fact, well over 300,000, close to about 400,000 as we speak right now of COVID-19 numbers. Moving now into some of the major slides we have to help us dimension this and actually buttress some of this further. You can actually see that South Africa is still the country with the highest confirmed cases of COVID-19, over close to 200,000 right now. Experts are predicting that by the end of today, that number might hit the 200,000 mark, followed by Egypt with over 75,000, Nigeria with well over 28,000, and Ghana with over 20,000. You can see Algeria, Morocco, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, Sudan, Kenya, and all goes down that way. But as it stands right now, we also are getting closer to the 500,000 mark in terms of COVID-19 cases in this place, although the death is still relatively low, 11,390. But the fact that close to half of those have recovered, it's a good news. And that's something that has been prevalent all over the world. Now, moving on to the next one, trying to break it down. You can say the last record cases for COVID-19, South Africa had over 10,000, while Egypt was second with over close to about 2,000, 1,774, Cameroon, Guinea, and Nigeria. Now to the cities that are most affected and infected with COVID-19, Western Cape with still 69,531, then Lagos State, then Greater Accra, then Abidjan, and then Khartoum. You're looking at all this, putting it into context. Lagos brings something to mind because the Bloomberg in the US have actually published a report. They did an investigative journalism into COVID-19 in Nigeria and the effect it has had. And they have said that the security apparatus here in Nigeria have been opportunists and have used COVID-19 to oppress the people, and not just oppress the people, to extort the people, and they have caused more harm than good. Then that's the report that Bloomberg is actually putting out. That report actually, that investigative journalism actually came out where they said doctors have been harassed, people have been slapped, people have been beaten, people have been detained, as a matter of fact, which is not looking good for the Nigerian police. Because remember, at the beginning of this COVID-19 pandemic here in Nigeria in March, there were reports that the security apparatus were killing more people than COVID-19 was killing people. As a matter of fact, in March, 11 people had died of COVID-19 in Nigeria, and 18 people had died from brutality and manhandling from security apparatus here in Nigeria, which is not really good. And the international community are really taking note, and they are speaking against this. And several people, although the Nigerian government have refused to actually give a comment to that particular article that was written by Bloomberg, because they actually contacted the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed, who refused to actually comment on it, or the PTF on what has been going on. But one thing that has been prevalent in Nigeria has been the fact that the security apparatus, be it the Nigerian police or others, have taken advantage of this to extort people and even make lives more miserable. And they are stating that COVID-19 or rather, the security apparatus in Nigeria are making COVID-19 even worse. As a matter of fact, they're even claiming that it is even worse to be in the hands of those people than to actually even have COVID-19 here in Nigeria. Now, let's try to spread our tentacles to how things are actually playing out in the world. Something particular is happening in India as you cross over to how things are actually playing out in India. At the moment, you look at it, over 90,000 deaths have been recorded in India. 244,814 active cases, and the total number of cases they've seen has been 673,165. And a lot of experts in India are saying that, looking at those numbers, close to about 1.4 billion people are in India. And them posting this number seems to say that they are doing something right, although critics of the government are still claiming that they haven't done enough. The list of the cities there. But yesterday, the government took a major step, a very, very major step, pivotal step in India. They've opened the biggest temporary isolation center. Now, this particular statistic, before I come into the isolation center, this particular statistic states that at the moment, 16 to 45 are more prevalent to have COVID-19 in India than any other demographic, be it 0 to 15, be it 46 to 60, or 60 and above. Those are that particular demographic bracket tend to have it more because they are more mobile, they go around more, they interact with people more, and they've been speaking to people to be more cautious about how they go about their daily lives, not to infect more people. Now, talking about India and what they're trying to do to combat and fight against COVID-19, they have actually created 10,000 bed spaces in New Delhi. As a matter of fact, putting that together, it took it's the size of almost 20 football fields to be able to accommodate that 10,000 spaces, which is the largest by any stretch of imagination for a single isolation center in the world, and they're getting plaudits for that at the moment.
Well, your report on the Bloomberg story, alleging security infractions in Nigeria in the season of COVID-19, you will recall, of course, that when the lockdown was first imposed, there were cases of police brutality across the country. One gentleman was killed in Niger Delta, and here in Lagos, on one occasion, the health workers had to down tools because of the harassment of their officials. But I don't think that the fear, has disappeared, because here in Lagos, by next week, we're being told that you will be arrested if you are not wearing masks.
True.
Face masks. So that becomes an opportunity for the security agencies. Do you have any fears that we'll have a further escalation in police brutality? Because the police or the task force will try to enforce the wearing of face masks. Well, I mean, ordinarily we should say it should be enforced. But is there any protocol in place to make sure that this does not become another opportunity for brutalizing the people? Secondly, yesterday, the 3-day fasting and prayer session that was announced by the Presidential Task Force was concluded. And all the priests who held prayers have told us that in the season of COVID-19, we should also use the prayer option. And I hope that our prayers will be answered.
Amen to that. Now, speaking about this, I have seen and I've listened to those tricycle operators in Nigeria. They are the most affected by this, because at the moment, if a tricycle operator, for example, a tricycle operator was once complaining that just because someone in his tricycle just took down his mask to receive a phone call, they extorted him and told him he must pay at least 1,000 naira. Some say they collect as much as 2,000 naira from them. Wow. And those are the people they are targeting. They go to key points, because several of the rains have come into Lagos, and certainly we are beginning to see more potholes. So they just strategically stay at those potholes, look for those tricycles, look into the vehicles. Anyone that is not putting on a face mask or probably has his face mask down, immediately they don't want to arrest you. They just tell you straight up, deliver the quota, which is at least 1,000 naira upwards, or you'll be arrested and your tricycle will be impounded. And these things need to really be looked into. Rufa, you want to say something?
Aaron.
Yeah.
the police officers too are complicit. They should wear face masks.
True.
I see a lot of them without face masks. So if they want to enforce the law, they too should wear face masks. I will never yield to a police officer that is not wearing a face mask, trying to enforce the law by saying, and I know why I'm saying this. I know why I'm saying this. Because a lot of police officers out there don't have face masks.
We've got to go. I didn't get to talk to you about Spain and Australia and their partial lockdowns, but maybe tomorrow.
All right, thank you very much.